What if I told you that some of heavy metal's loudest rebels, the ones who once lived fast, played hard, and screamed defiance into the microphone, walked away from it all to find faith? These were legends who shook arenas with bone-crushing riffs and chaotic energy, only to trade the spotlight for sermons, scripture, and spiritual devotion. Their transformations shocked fans, with some disappearing almost overnight, while others openly declared a new purpose that seemed worlds apart from their music. But what drove these icons to abandon the stage for God? Here are 12 heavy metal legends who left music behind, and the surprising stories of why they chose faith over fame. 12. Dave Mustaine. Dave Mustaine's name is legendary in thrash metal history. From being kicked out of Metallica to creating Megadeth, his career was filled with anger, rebellion, and chaos. He built his reputation on heavy riffs and lyrics that often carried dark, aggressive themes. But behind the fame, Mustaine battled addiction, broken relationships, and a lifestyle that was pushing him toward destruction. Years of alcohol, drugs, and constant conflict nearly ended him. What shocked fans most was his decision to turn his life around through Christianity. After hitting rock bottom, Mustaine found faith and used it to rebuild his life. This didn't mean he abandoned Megadeth completely, but it did mean a dramatic change in his music and message. The satanic and occult themes that once defined the band started to fade, replaced with songs that reflected a new outlook. Fans were divided, some embraced the change, others felt betrayed, but for Mustaine, it was survival. He believed God gave him a second chance, and that chance was worth more than clinging to the chaos. Dave Mustaine's story stands as a powerful example of a heavy metal legend who left behind his destructive path and turned toward God, shocking an entire genre built on rebellion. 11. Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper, the master of shock rock, built his career on blood, snakes, guillotines, and some of the wildest stage shows in history. To many, he was the ultimate symbol of darkness in rock and metal. His image was larger than life, and his performances blurred the line between theater and nightmare. But behind the makeup and stage persona, the real man was falling apart. Alcohol consumed him, nearly destroying his health and career. In the late 70s, Cooper made a decision no one expected. He embraced Christianity, finding faith as the answer to his struggles. This shift saved him from a life of addiction and gave him a new purpose. What makes Cooper's story so unique is that he didn't quit performing or abandon his theatrical shows. He continued rocking stages, but his faith became the foundation that grounded him. The so-called Prince of Darkness revealed himself as a man who found light in God, shocking both fans and critics who thought they knew him. Alice Cooper's journey proves that even one of rock's wildest performers could step away from the destructive path and dedicate his life to God, turning shock into salvation. 10. Nicko McBrain. Nicko McBrain, the powerhouse drummer of Iron Maiden, spent decades touring the world, playing in front of millions, and living the heavy metal lifestyle. His drumming became the heartbeat of one of the greatest metal bands of all time, and fans couldn't imagine Maiden without his thunder behind the kit. Yet offstage, Nicko wrestled with the same temptations that destroyed many musicians before him: alcohol, excess, and emptiness. His career was larger than life, but his soul was searching for something deeper. In the late 90s, Nicko experienced a turning point that would shock fans everywhere. He gave his life to Christ, openly declaring his faith and becoming a devoted Christian. This wasn't just a small change in private, it was a transformation that impacted every part of his life. Suddenly, the man known for hammering drums with fiery energy was standing in churches, talking about how God had saved him. What's remarkable is that Nicko didn't abandon Iron Maiden. He continued playing, still giving fans the unforgettable performances they loved. But behind the wild drum solos was a man completely devoted to God, balancing the world of heavy metal with a deep spiritual foundation. Nicko's decision showed that even within one of the loudest and darkest corners of music, faith could shine through. 9. Dan Spitz. As the lead guitarist of Anthrax, Dan Spitz carved out a place in thrash history. The band was one of the legendary Big Four of thrash metal, alongside Metallica, Slayer, and Megadeth. Anthrax built their fame on aggressive riffs, rebellious energy, and a stage presence that thrilled fans worldwide. Spitz was right in the middle of it, living the dream that so many young musicians craved. But behind the curtain, he was restless. The fame, the lifestyle, and the noise of heavy metal weren't enough to fill the emptiness inside him. Spitz eventually made a choice no one saw coming. He stepped away from Anthrax and turned his life toward Christianity. Instead of stadiums filled with screaming fans, he found peace in faith and family. Even more surprising, he began studying watchmaking, an intricate, quiet craft that was the total opposite of his wild life on stage. This shocking turn left fans wondering how a thrash guitarist could trade chaos for calm. For Spitz, it was about survival and truth. He believed his faith gave him clarity, something far more valuable than fame or fortune. By leaving the music that defined him, he became another heavy metal legend who chose God over the spotlight. 8. Brian Head Welch. Brian Head Welch was one of the most recognizable faces in the world of nu metal. As Korn's guitarist, his aggressive riffs, wild stage presence, and dark lyrics helped shape a new era of heavy music. Korn wasn't just a band, it was a cultural movement, and Head was at the very center of it. But the fame came with a cost. Behind the scenes, Welch was drowning in addiction, broken relationships, and an overwhelming emptiness that no amount of money or success could fix. In 2005, he made a decision that sent shockwaves through the entire music world. Welch quit Korn, walked away from millions of dollars, and embraced Christianity. He even got baptized in front of thousands of fans, making his transformation public. For many, it was unthinkable that a man who helped define the sound of anger and rebellion would turn to God, but for Welch, it was the only way to survive. Years later, he rejoined Korn, but his outlook was different. Instead of running from his past, he used his platform to share his testimony. His story showed that even someone surrounded by the darkest sounds of heavy metal could find peace and purpose in faith. 7. Tom Araya. When people think of Slayer, they think of fire, chaos, and some of the most controversial music in heavy metal history. Known for satanic imagery, violent lyrics, and a sound that terrified parents everywhere, Slayer represented rebellion in its purest form. At the front of it all was Tom Araya, the band's powerful vocalist and bassist. Fans saw him as the voice of darkness, a man who screamed lyrics that pushed boundaries with every song. But offstage, Tom's life told a different story. Despite fronting one of the most extreme bands of all time, he was a devout Catholic. He openly spoke about his faith, surprising many who assumed Slayer's image matched his beliefs. For Araya, the shocking part wasn't abandoning music, it was showing the world that faith and heavy metal could exist in the same life. When Slayer finally ended their farewell tour, Araya stepped away from the chaos of touring and chose to focus on his family and his faith. To fans, it was another reminder that even in the darkest corners of heavy metal, God had quietly been present all along. 6. Michael Sweet. Michael Sweet's journey is unlike most heavy metal stars because he never had to abandon God. He built his entire career on faith. As the frontman of Stryper, Sweet shocked the metal scene by doing something no one had ever done before. He blended hard-hitting guitar riffs with openly Christian lyrics. At a time when most bands were singing about rebellion, excess, and darkness, Stryper was handing out Bibles at their concerts and singing about salvation. The band's success in the 80s proved that Christian metal had an audience, but it wasn't an easy road. Critics mocked them, rival bands dismissed them, and even fans sometimes struggled to understand how faith and heavy metal could exist together. Yet through it all, Michael Sweet remained committed. His powerful voice and bold message showed the world that you could be both heavy and holy. What makes his story fit this list is his unwavering dedication. While others in metal turned away from destructive lifestyles after finding faith, Sweet started with faith and never left it behind. He built a career that made him both a rock star and a messenger, showing that even in a world built on chaos, God could have a place on stage. 5. Peter Criss. Peter Criss, the original drummer of Kiss, lived through the wildest years of rock and roll excess. Known as the Catman, he was part of one of the most theatrical and outrageous bands in history. Kiss dominated arenas with fire, blood, and spectacle. And behind the scenes, the lifestyle was even wilder. Drugs, alcohol, and endless temptation followed Criss everywhere, leaving scars that fame couldn't heal. As the years went on, Chris realized the chaos had nearly destroyed him. Instead of continuing down that dark path, he turned his life toward God. He credits his faith with saving him from self-destruction, giving him a peace that the world of fame never could. While he rarely performs now, he speaks openly about how Christianity reshaped his life and gave him direction. For fans who grew up watching him play thunderous drums behind painted masks, Peter Criss's shift was unexpected, but it showed once again that even the loudest, most rebellious corners of heavy music could lead someone straight into the arms of God. 4. Mark Farner. Mark Farner rose to fame as the guitarist and frontman of Grand Funk Railroad, a band that pushed rock and heavy sounds into arenas filled with screaming fans. Known for his powerful stage presence and fiery energy, Farner had everything a musician could dream of: success, fame, and influence. Yet, like many in the rock and metal world, he found that the spotlight came with shadows. The lifestyle of constant touring, temptation, and excess left him searching for something that fame alone couldn't give. In time, Farner experienced a spiritual awakening that completely transformed his path. He became a born-again Christian and shifted his focus from rebellion-driven anthems to faith-filled performances. Instead of screaming crowds waiting for chaos, he now plays for audiences looking for inspiration. His concerts turned into uplifting gatherings where his guitar and voice spread messages of hope rather than destruction. For fans, the transformation was stunning. One of rock's most fiery performers had stepped back from the noise and redirected his energy toward God. Mark Farner's choice stands as a powerful reminder that even those who thrive in the chaos of heavy music sometimes discover peace only in faith. 3. Blackie Lawless. Blackie Lawless built his reputation on controversy. As the leader of WASP, he became one of the most feared and criticized names in 80s heavy metal. His band's outrageous shows, filled with shocking imagery and obscene lyrics, earned him a reputation as one of rock's ultimate rebels. Parents hated him, critics condemned him, and fans adored the chaos. But behind the mask of defiance, Blackie was fighting his own demons. Years later, fans were stunned when he revealed that he had embraced Christianity. The same man who once wrote some of the most explicit and rebellious songs in metal was now speaking about redemption and faith. Lawless even refused to perform many of WASP's old songs, saying the lyrics no longer matched his beliefs. It was a dramatic and rare shift that few could have predicted. Blackie Lawless's transformation showed that even one of heavy metal's most controversial figures could step away from his past and find peace in God. For many, his story is one of the most striking examples of how faith can break through the darkest walls of rebellion. 2. Lou Gramm. Lou Gramm, best known as the iconic voice of Foreigner, carried a sound that blended classic rock with powerful, hard-hitting tones that often brushed up against heavy metal energy. His soaring vocals defined hits that filled arenas, and his career placed him among the greats. But behind the fame and spotlight, Graham's life began to crumble under the weight of addiction and personal battles. He struggled with drugs, alcohol, and eventually a life-threatening brain tumor that forced him to face mortality head-on. It was during this darkest chapter that Graham experienced a spiritual awakening. He became a born-again Christian, openly embracing faith as his new foundation. The change didn't just impact his personal life, it also shaped the music he performed. Instead of chasing the chaos of the past, he began singing songs inspired by hope, peace, and God's presence in his life. His faith gave him strength during recovery, and he credited it with carrying him through moments when doctors weren't sure he would survive. For fans, Lou Gramm's transformation was remarkable. A man who once stood on the world's biggest stages with the energy of hard rock and heavy metal now found his greatest power not in his voice, but in his faith. 1. David Ellefson. David Ellefson, the longtime bassist of Megadeth, spent decades at the heart of one of the most influential heavy metal bands ever. Known for his pounding bass lines and relentless energy, Ellefson lived through the chaos of thrash metal's rise. Like many of his peers, he battled the temptations of fame and the dark lifestyle that came with it. But instead of letting it consume him, Ellefson chose a different path, one that shocked the entire heavy metal community. He pursued Christianity, not quietly, but fully. Ellefson studied theology, became a Lutheran pastor, and even launched faith-based projects alongside his music career. For a man who built his name in a genre often linked with rebellion and darkness, stepping into ministry was a bold and unexpected move. Though controversies later shook his personal life, his commitment to faith remained a central part of who he was. By choosing God over the endless noise of heavy metal's excess, Ellefson became one of the most notable legends to walk away from the destructive side of music and step into the light of faith. His journey closed a chapter in metal's history where rebellion ruled, proving that even the hardest riffs can lead straight to God. From stadiums filled with fire and noise to quiet moments of faith and surrender, these 12 heavy metal legends prove that even the loudest voices can choose silence for something greater. They walked away from chaos, temptation, and rebellion, trading it all for peace in God. Their stories remind us that behind the makeup, the riffs, and the spotlight, they were still human, searching for meaning when the music stopped. So here's the question. If some of the heaviest names in metal found something worth giving it all up for, what might you be overlooking in your own life? If you loved uncovering the hidden stories behind the music, make sure to hit that subscribe button, share this video with your friends, and keep watching because more untold truths from the world of music are on the way.